This is the first part of BMAR211, Study Unit 4, Chapter 5, and we will have a look at service development and design. You have 9 learning outcomes, but it is quite a short chapter nonetheless. First, identify the unique demands of designing a new service, discuss the basic elements of a service development process, distinguish between different types of new services, discuss the stages in new service development, and then 5 will encompass the rest of the learning outcomes, where you will distinguish between alternative methods of building a service architecture. First, you will see the steps and how to develop a service blueprint, then explain the components of quality function deployment through the service quality matrix, develop a service quality matrix, and then lastly, distinguish between different methods of service process design. As a brief overview or introduction of this unit, now, due to the unique characteristics of services, service design demands exceptional creativity and the repeated testing of new concepts, service products, and service strategies. If you stick to a same service or product from the 1990s, you will definitely not be as successful because people are evolving, technology is evolving, and this needs repeated testing and creativity. So, this chapter will explore the requirements of successful new service design to remain competitive. There is also a discussion of the 2 stages of new service development, and this is between the planning phase and the implementation phase, and each of these 2 main phases have their sub-stages. And then also 2 frequently used tools for planning and conceptualizing new services is service blueprinting and quality function deployment. Starting off with learning outcome 1, what are the unique demands of service design? Now, you can Google this or research this, and there are several challenges when you think of designing a new service. For the most part, from a managerial perspective, it is the intangibility of services that contribute to their overall complexity. Remember, you cannot touch a service, so it is a unique demand to actually design your service precisely and accurately. Then, as a result of this, services are also very difficult to standardize as they are often delivered or performed by employees who are human beings, as we have covered in the introduction unit, for example, study unit 1. In other words, human beings do not always act consistently and therefore do not naturally perform the service consistently. Another thing to consider, customers experience service delivery differently. As human beings, customers do not always experience the same service in the same way, and this high level of human involvement in both service delivery and service consumption makes designing a service particularly difficult. You cannot satisfy all of your customers. Customers have higher or lower or moderate experiences, and all that you can do is provide a standardized as much as possible and make sure your customers are always satisfied and that you adhere to their expectations and make sure they have an above and beyond experience. There are several risks associated with describing your service in words alone, and briefly we refer to oversimplification, incompleteness, subjectivity, and biased interpretation. Make sure you complete the individual portfolio of evidence activities so that you can practice these risks based on an existing company in South Africa. Then to continue, when designing a new service, the first question ought to be related to the purpose of the service. So, what is the purpose? Why are we designing this new service? Wasn't it successful? Do we need to adapt to change? Do we need to adapt to technological or procedural changes? Why are we doing this? You also need to ask, can the service be classified as belonging to a specific group of services? Also refer to the several dimensions that have been developed for the classification of services on page 121. First, distinction should be made between equipment-based and people-based services, and this we have done with the classification of services. Then a 2x2 matrix classification contrasting low consumer contact and high consumer contact services with low customization and high customization services. And then lastly, a 3-dimensional classification in terms of the degree of labor intensity to produce the service, the degree of interaction between the customer and the service provider, and the customization of the service to the customer's specification. All of these dimensions should be considered in terms of classifying this new service. A common theme for classification is the nature and extent of customer contact between the service provider and the customers. At this stage, we have absolutely no contact, and it's very sad, but some might prefer it. Another demanding aspect of service design is the division between the front office activities and the back office activities. The front office of the service delivery system is directly experienced by and visible to the customer. This is like going to Star Kinekor and booking a ticket from the person that's working there, if there are people working there, or collecting your snacks. And then back office is part of the delivery system from which the customer is physically excluded. For example, you don't see the people at the back end of the cinema that is in the process of airing the movie or making sure everything is cleaned up before you enter the cinema. Organizing, coordinating, and integrating front and back office activities to ensure optimal service delivery is one of the unique demands of marketing a service. And as if all of those demands aren't enough, another dilemma encountered in the front office is the varying forms of co-production of services by employees and customers. There are four variables that influence co-production decisions, and this is input uncertainty, customer willingness to participate, diversity of demands, and interdependencies. And this you can refer to on page 122. Then to end off the unique demands to creating or designing a new service, it is made more demanding by various key service factors. These include, for example, the service mix describing the breadth and depth of the service, the location where the service is consumed, the design of the service facility and accessories, the technology employed in rendering the service, employee-related aspects like the number of employees and so forth, the organizational structure, information requirements to render the service, demand and supply management, the procedures to deliver the required standardization or customization of the service in all its complex detail, and also control processes to ensure the smooth running of the service operation and the performance of quality control. Moving on to learning outcome 2, which touches on new service development. And here you need to consider two basic characteristics of a service development process. First, service design thinking and techniques should be used in conceptualizing and designing the service as explained up to this point. It is also important to keep in mind that the way in which the organization creates its competitive advantage must be integrated into the design and development process. Secondly, a successful new service development process must incorporate inputs from both employees and customers. If you want to have great internal marketing, you have to make sure your employees are as involved in the development of the new service because they will be satisfied and they will feel that they have a voice, meaning that they will work harder, you will retain them, and they will also make sure that your customers, which brings in the money, so that you can pay the employees, all happens at the end of the day. What are the frontline employees again? They are in close contact with the customers and therefore develop an accurate sense of what the customer needs and what their expectations are. This is where a lot of companies fail with their execution, is because they think exactly about the knowledge gap. They think they know what customers want, but in essence, the employees that work in the front office, they actually know what the customers want. And then they need to be given a voice and have inputs in the management meetings and teams so that they can relate to management what the customers actually want, so that that gap can be closed and that the development of the service or the new service can be a bit more successful than just ignoring what these frontline employees actually know. Customer inputs, on the other hand, are particularly important, and the organization must make sure what their needs and expectations are and adequately integrate need-satisfying features and attributes into the new service. If we refer back to the Coke Life example during the marketing research process, it was discontinued in 2020. Yes, they got information from customers, but I think they missed a step to find out whether customers weren't actually satisfied with what was already on the market, namely the artificially sweetened soft drinks, instead of having a naturally sweetened product, where at the end of the day, based on the sales, people weren't that interested at the end of the day. So they have to make sure they get in-depth customer inputs to not waste millions on a product that will not be as successful as to where a product that customers actually want would be. And now the interesting part, the types of new services as part of Learning Outcome 3. You will see from page 123 until 125 the several different examples of the new types of services. Please make sure you read through all of these, understand them, be able to identify and describe them, as well as read through different scenarios and identify which type of service was being used by this specific organization. The first one is an innovation not experienced before. This is easy. It's something that's brand new and is not being experienced by consumers at all. Just note that there are 4 different categories. The first one is service innovations, for which new service characteristics are developed. For example, when retailers like Woolworths and Pick n Pay started offering internet shopping as a service. So that was not available at the time, and then they started offering that, and now it is being implemented by most food retailers. A second one is a process innovation, for which radical new processes are used to deliver existing core products in new ways to customers. An example is residential university starting to offer its program online. Next is a supplementary service innovation, for which a new facilitating or enhancing service element is added to an existing core service. And then technological innovation might also enable service innovations by changing customer roles. An example here was Netflix when it launched. This was online video streaming. The example I have is in terms of self-driving cars. This is brand new. It's being piloted. But once this is available, it will definitely be a new innovation not experienced before. So I'm going to play a short bit of the video so that you can get an idea, and this will also be linked on the Ifundi site.
What self-driving cars are going to do for society, but we don't want to wait 5, 10, 15 years for that to come to fruition. So we're very focused on bringing this technology to market to those who need it most.
Voyage connects communities using autonomous vehicles. I'm Eric Gonzalez. I'm a co-founder and director of engineering at Voyage. So we provide a service that allows residents to summon an autonomous vehicle to their doorstep and drive them anywhere within a community.
I think one of the things that sets us apart is we specifically...
So just imagine if you summon an autonomous vehicle, it takes you to where you command it to go. Just what an incredible concept that would be. Then a recent one that is actually on its way in South Africa in terms of a startup business is Takealot.com's competitor. This is Every Shop. This is for everyone. So you can also, it's a similar concept to Takealot, where you can order online and get your stuff delivered to your doorstep. Then new services for existing markets. This is where a service organization tries to offer its existing customers new services not previously available from the organization, although the services were available to customers from competitors. But then there's also a new market for existing services. And this is usually where a service organization gradually extends its market coverage by offering its existing services in new geographical regions. For example, if Every Shop is operating and in full swing, they take their shop to Botswana, then that will be a new market for an existing service. Line extensions then. When considering line extensions, a distinction should be drawn between service line extensions and a process line extension. The first one includes the additions to an existing service line, like a restaurant adding a new item to its menu, and then a process line extension represents distinctive new ways of delivering existing products for more customer convenience or a different customer experience. Let's take the university SS or the cafeteria. They are adding pizza to their menu, so that will extend their line. But now they also offer an app where you can sit at Building 25 and you can order your new pizza and it gets delivered to you at Building 25. Then we also have service improvements. This represents changes in the features or attributes of services that are already on offer. For example, the SS can stay open 24/7 for students that live on campus when they start living on campus again. Lastly, style changes. This also happened in 2020, where PEP changed their corporate logo from the left to the right to appeal or to keep up to date with the new consumers. But then style changes may also be rated as the most modest service changes, but are often highly visible and may have significant effects on customer perceptions, emotions, and attitudes. Learning outcome 4 is an extensive learning outcome with several phases and stages. I will keep this discussion for the purpose of the presentation as short as possible. So as per the introduction, there are 2 main phases in the new service development, and this includes planning for the new service development and then the implementation of the service concept that you planned for. First, for the planning phase, you generally refer to the idea generation phase, and this is where the objectives and the strategies for the new service are defined. How do you actually generate or get ideas for a new concept? Well, you need to brainstorm. You gather your team and you brainstorm on how you can improve your existing service or how you can come up with a brand new service for the market. You can also encourage your ideas from your employees, which is also very valuable. Also, user research, observing how customers use the organization's services and see where faults happen or how they can improve that. Also, a formal competitive analysis. You can always look at what your competitors are doing and build on a service concept from that. Then, collaboration with competitors, vendors, or other strategic partners is also an option to get a new service. Then, supplemental possession, processing services to physical products, and re engineering of your existing service is also an option to get a new service concept on the table. Now, a newly generated service idea that fits the organization and service strategies requires some initial development. The service concept must be developed by first formulating concrete guidelines on A, what the organization intends to deliver to a specified customer market or segment, B, how this is going to be executed, and C, what resources are going to be required to do so. The service design document must contain a statement on both the service marketing concept and the service operations concept. More detail on this on page 129 in the middle of the page. The second element, which is the service operations concept, describes first of all, the nature of the service processes in terms of people processing, possession processing, mental stimulus processing, and information processing. Also, the geographical scope of operations. Will you only operate in your local area, or is it countrywide? Is it international? What's your geographical scope? Also, the scheduling of the service in terms of hours, days, or seasons of service, continuous or intermittent delivery. And if it is intermittent delivery, the required frequency. Also, the design of the facilities and the layout of the service delivery. Human resources in terms of required numbers and skill level of your employees. Then leverage attained using partnership, joint venture, strategic alliance, or self-service options. And then lastly, the breakdown of the service task between the front office and the back office employees. Once you have your generated idea and your service concept is on paper in that document, now you have to evaluate that in the idea evaluation phase. So this is where the service idea is developed and assessed. Now these phases are also interrelated. So first we will have a look at how organizational strategy results in service strategy, and then how new service strategy development plays a role. In terms of the first point, in this step, the organization considers the types of possible new services that they can add to their company. They have to, first of all, increase their profit, increase their market share, and should be in line with their mission, vision, objectives, and overall philosophy. They cannot have an unrelated service that does not add to or build on their organizational strategy. In terms of the new service strategy development, they have to consider the following criteria: the market or market segments that they want to serve. First of all, determine whether there is a market to serve, the types of service that they want to deliver, time frame, the profit generation criteria, are they serving current or new customers, new innovations or style changes to existing services, and so forth. Now you have your concept in place, it's documented, and so forth. You can start to pilot, but now you want to implement the service concept, and there are several phases or stages. Have a look at these 4 phases and understand what happens under each of these stages. So, service development and testing. Market testing, usually you take a product to a small test market. Usually in South Africa, it's Joburg, Pretoria, or Cape Town, major cities. Then they test whether this will be implementable or whether it's feasible and if it's going to be successful. Have a look at the example of Amazon Go on the Ifundi page. Commercialization is where you can actually take this concept and commercialize it and practically implement it in the consumer market, where everyone as a customer can participate in your service offering. And then after that's been done, you get your reviews and your complaints, and then you evaluate the introduction of this concept to see whether it's profitable, whether there's a return on investment, whether customers are satisfied, and so forth. That brings us to the end of part 1. Make sure you watch part 2. Looking at Learning Outcome 5, you will review 2 main methods and alternative methods of how to build a service architecture. You've planned and now you have implemented your new service concept, but the new service must be carefully described and depicted, including in a graphical way, to ensure that everyone involved clearly understands the dimensions and requirements of this new service. We will refer and describe and teach you how to do a service blueprint, and also quality function deployment using the service quality matrix. As part of Learning Outcome 5 is Learning Outcome 6, concerning service blueprinting. A service blueprint is a picture or map that visually displays the service by simultaneously depicting the process of service delivery, the points of customer contact, the role of customers and the employees, as well as the visible elements of the service. Have a look at page 135 until 136, as well as figure 5.1, depicting the example of a pet salon. The components in a service blueprint, first of all, is the customer actions. And this refers to the steps, choices, activities, and interactions that the customer performs in the process of acquiring, consuming, and evaluating the service. And this should be included. What the customer does in terms of their actions for your service. We will refer to a few examples shortly. Next is the front office contact employee actions. What do they do? This includes those steps and activities that the contact employee performs that are visible to the customer. For example, booking your ticket at the movies. With the back office contact employee actions, these are the activities that occur behind the scenes to support front staff activities. These actions are invisible to the customer. Support processes refer to the internal processes, services, steps, and interactions that take place to support the contact employees in delivering the service. There's also a list of physical evidence activities, and these are found at the very top of the blueprint. These lists refer to actual physical evidence of the service for each point of the contact between the customer and the contact employees. For example, your ticket that you will take to another front office employee before you can enter the cinema. There's also the line of interaction that separates customer actions from the front office contact employee action. Also the line of visibility that separates the front office contact employee actions from the back office contact employee actions. Also the line of internal interaction that separates contact employees' actions from activities and people that support them. Now, getting to the steps of building your actual blueprint. First, you need to identify the process to be blueprinted, identify the customer or customer segment that you are targeting, map the process from the customer's point of view, map the contact employee actions on stage and backstage, and or technology actions, link contact activities to necessary support functions, and then lastly, add evidence of service at each customer action step. All of these steps are detailed in the textbook. Make sure you refer to the exact process to follow to build a service blueprint, but we will get into the practical side of this. Let's look at an example for way back when you remember where you had to go to a class physically and we had to prepare a lesson to present the module to you as the customer who is the student. An example of back office employee actions would be me preparing the content for practical handout and presentation. So now I'm preparing the presentation and also the worksheets that you completed in class during contact sessions. How do I do this? What are my support processes? Well, I use the marketing textbook. I also use the internet. What do you do as the customer? First, you enter the venue to receive the lesson. What's the physical evidence? Chairs, tables, the projector, the computer, and so forth. What do I do as a front office employee action? Remember that sometimes the same employee can have back office employee actions and front office employee actions because, for example, I'm one employee and I can fulfill both roles. Also, a front office action would be me presenting the content in class. What do I use to support this process? The computer, the projector, the sound. What are the customer actions? Mostly, you listen to the presentation if you're not on your phone or talking to each other. What is another form of physical evidence? As I mentioned, the projector screen. What do you do? Most students do not, but take notes. Then I ask you a question. Then you answer the question after encouraging you for 5 minutes. Then I provide instructions and hand out the practical worksheet. You do the group work, sometimes individually. What is the physical evidence of this? This is the physical paper, the practical handout, or perhaps the document that I send on that you can complete on a laptop in the classroom. What is the back office actions after you submit your work? I have to assess the practical work. I also have to set the test paper to test your actual knowledge. And that is how you can design a blueprint for a service. Now you see that it is not that difficult. It's quite simple. As long as you understand or fully understand how a service works, you can complete this entire blueprint. This will be something that you will practice in the individual activity. Let's take a more familiar example, perhaps McDonald's. What do? You drive up to the shop. There's a drive-through menu. You decide what you want to order if you haven't yet. The back office, they keep the menu updated in terms of the prices and what is available and what isn't. You place your order. There is a window for the orders and a payment, a card machine, for example. They take your order as the front office employee at the window. They take your order. They communicate to the kitchen what is the support process. So at McDonald's, KFC, and so forth, they have two systems. The one front office employee inputs the order and it gets communicated to the back office computer screen. So there's a system for the orders. They prepare the food in the kitchen. It's not something that's always visible to the customer. That's a back office action. What do they need? Well, they need the fryers and the equipment to do that. You pay as a customer. The front office employee receives the money or the card for the transaction. There's a cash register for the support process or the card machine. The back office employees, after they've prepared the meals, they place it in the packaging. Then they give it to the front office employee who then gives it to you or hands you the order. You receive the order, and then there's a window for collection. Also, the packaging is physical evidence and your payment slip or your invoice. And then that's an example for McDonald's in terms of the service blueprint. On Ifundi, I will post a link, the difference between a customer journey and a blueprint. So you can see that those are interrelated but two different or separate concepts. Then as part of Learning Outcome 7, you will learn about quality function deployment. And then for Learning Outcome 8, you will be able to draw up a service quality matrix. Now, QFD is a tool that can be used to translate customer requirements into organizational requirements at each stage of service delivery. If you have the older textbook, you will see that it was presented by the House of Quality, and it's still relevant today. But for this module or for this textbook, they present it by means of a service quality matrix, and this links customer requirements to design characteristics of a specific service. If you have a look on page 137, you will see figure 5.2, and this is a service quality matrix for a hotel group, and you will see familiar dimensions or concepts there. On the left, you will see tangibles, reliability, responsiveness, assurance, empathy. These dimensions of service quality are widely applicable in the service industry in terms of service marketing. And with this quality matrix, you will see you have to rate in terms of friendliness, improved communication, reorganization training, for example. You assign a weighted score or the improvement difficulty rank. So how difficult is it to improve your communication? So they assigned a 4, or the training is a 5. And then this is how you develop your quality matrix for a hotel group. There are several distinct elements, and this you can see on page 137 until 139. So make sure you read through that to understand how to draft this service quality matrix. As part of the additional information for this unit or this learning outcomes, there will be a video and an article that explains the House of Quality, because that is a bit more valuable in terms of practical implication for your service organization. And there are various examples of actual companies that implemented this method for their service organization. And now you should be able to discuss and identify, for example, service blueprinting and QFD, and be able to draw up especially a blueprint, because that will be the main focus of the service architecture side for this module. For Learning Outcome 9, you have to make sure you also regard the other methods for service process design, be able to identify and describe them, as well as regard a case study and suggest possible ones that they can implement and how to do so practically. All of the details for these methods are detailed on page 139, but you can consider service flowcharting, service mapping, value analysis or value engineering, sequential incident analysis, and benchmarking. So make sure you review the content for these other methods as well. That brings us to the end of this unit. If you have any questions, please make sure to contact your lecturer.